if we can go ahead and get started with announcements.
Good afternoon, Board. Wanted to let you know that we have a quorum in order to see the special use permit, but we did not have a quorum in order to see the variances. So that is why we will only see the special use permit today.
Do we have to vote to continue the variances to next, or do they automatically get moved to the next month's meeting?
They would have to be continued. I did discuss with the applicants that they did not need to show up today because we knew they'd had to be continued anyways.
In the absence of a quorum, you wouldn't even have the authority to vote to continue them.
Okay, great.
Nobody told us.
You know, parties withstanding, we're not notified. Sorry.
Okay, so anybody who's here for a variance, you can be excused and then come back next month. I'm sorry you weren't notified.
This is the second time. So next month will be a third time.
Okay, I do not have control over that, so I apologize, but there's nothing I can do about it today. But thank you for showing up.
What will be the date of the next meeting?
I'm not sure, staff, can you look that up?
That will be June 11th.
I'm sorry, when?
June 11th.
June 11th.
And if I may, for parties withstanding on one of those variance applications, would we be notified next time if there's another continuance? In the books, or do we just need to keep showing up?
You're more than welcome to call ahead. It happened very last minute yesterday where we didn't realize we'd have a quorum. Next time we will make sure that, hopefully we can let you guys know that, but sometimes it's even day of that we don't know that.
Thank you.
But yes, feel free to call ahead and we are more than welcome to, even the day of, and we'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because some of us have difficult schedules that shift a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Okay. So, if I can, any other announcements, Steph? Okay. If I can, move to roll call of board members. Joel, do you want to get us started?
Paul Wilczynski.
Carla Barnard.
Catherine Morsani?
Andy Ball.
Okay.
Savannah,
Oh, go ahead, sorry, staff.
Savannah Glantz.
Amy Broughton, legal.
Okay, great. And then I see that we have approval of minutes from last month. Who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes that were circulated by Savannah.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. All right, so disclosure of ex parte communications, conflict of interest. Anybody has, okay, so conflicts of interest and bias. After board member identifies reason for partiality, member should, excuse himself. And no members may participate in hearing if they've had on behalf of a friend, client, or family member, so. Anybody have any ex parte?
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay, great. All right, this hearing is a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. That means that similar to a court hearing, court law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this board must make its decisions. The board's discretion is limited. We must base our decision upon competent, relevant, and substantial evidence in the record. Our decisions must be constrained by the standards of the zoning ordinance and based on the facts presented. If you will be speaking as a witness today, please focus on the facts and standards, not personal preferences or opinions. General witness testimony is limited to facts, not opinions. For certain topics, this board needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values, projections about impacts of increased traffic. Individuals providing expert testimony must be qualified as experts and provide the factual evidence upon which they base their expert opinion. And so it looks like we're at Creekside, ZPH 2025000006, Creekside Community Phase. Phase 2 SUP revision.
Please raise your right hand and state your name. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Hey, Savannah, I don't hear you very well.
All right, let's try that again. I certify that this public hearing was properly noticed and all applicable parties were notified of the meeting in accordance to the general statutes and county code. And I ask that all applicant and staff materials be accepted into the record as evidence.
Okay, so granted.
Thank you. This is the review of ZPH 2025-00006, Creekside Community Phase 2. Applicant is Mark Ombach with M.A. Brevard Road LLC. The property is located at 311 Creekside Trail Lane, and the total acreage is 26.2 acres. The development will be serviced by public water and sewer. The property is zoned R2, and the special use permit proposes 178 townhome units and 30 residential structures. This application requests changes to building locations and unit types, and for deviations in lot size, interior setbacks, and parking within a previously approved plan unit development level 1, and that case number is ZPH 2022-00011. If approved by the board, staff recommends the following conditions of approval. A preliminary and as-built subdivision application shall be required prior to submittal of draft final plat of this project. The draft final plat of this project must be reviewed and approved, and the plat must be recorded and lots platted with unique PIN numbers for each lot prior to the submittal of the master site plan permit. Project must be constructed as depicted in the site plan. Prior to commencement of land disturbance and construction, applicant shall submit a site plan review permit for the entire project, and the applicant must agree in writing to these conditions prior to the commencement of site work.
Great. Does the board have any questions for Savannah? Okay, thank you, Savannah. Craig? I think you're up.
Large audience for this.
You guys are all on the same team, right?
We are,
Okay.
yeah. There's no
That's
I in
novel.
team. Yeah. So, Scott, why don't you go up there and get sworn in and describe the changes?
Take this with me. Scott Burwell.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, Scott, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell this nice board about your qualifications.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, my name is Scott Burwell. I'm a civil engineer with McGill Associates. I've been practicing since 2008 when I graduated college and received my PE in 2012, and have been primarily focused on civil site land development, both municipal and private, for the majority of my, seems like it's getting close to 20 years career. So that's a little bit about me.
Have you been tendered as an expert in front of this board before?
I have, yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would like to tender this witness as an expert in civil engineering.
Okay, so tendered.
So go ahead and describe the changes that we are requesting.
Will do. So ultimately, total unit count is not changing, as Savannah mentioned. Some of the buildings are reconfiguring in different locations now that we've gone through more detailed design on the stormwater, and we kind of know more of our site constraints of where those stormwater measures may go. So buildings have kind of shifted around, as well as both the community garden and the dog park area, to maintain the wetland buffers and minimize those disturbances. And then ultimately, the other change, as Savannah mentioned, the previous project was put before this board as a rental community, so there were not dedicated lots. Based on shifting market conditions, they want to be able to have lots to be able to sell them fee simple. So what we have provided in this TRC packet and in your information there is what the layout would look like with proposed lot lines and rear setbacks and rear yards and things of that nature. Thank you.
So Scott, what I handed up is what I marked as Exhibit 1. This is a document you had prepared.
That's right.
For the board. Madam Chairman, I would like to introduce Exhibit 1 into the record.
So submitted.
All right, so if you just gave an overview of changes, so why don't you, using Exhibit 1, just walk the board through
Okay.
A little bit more detail.
Yeah, so previously, if you look at the entrance, there's sort of a gap there where units were located to the right. If you pull in, that's where we're going to have to put an underground stormwater measure in that location based on maintaining pre-existing drainage areas and working closely with Victoria on making sure that those standards are met. We also moved some of the units to the left. You can see there's a kind of a parking area there to the left to be able to serve both the community garden as well as the dog park, plus units there on the left. We previously looked at being able to put like a stormwater pond or something in that location. But again, just based on site constraints and drainage areas, we've actually worked with the cliffs to the south, and that was shown on our stormwater plans for TRC, to work with them to actually move the pond onto the cliffs site to be able to kind of work in concert with their application. So if you look at sort of the horseshoe area, the first application had kind of a combined two large buildings. Now they're broken up with rear yards and not a shared back party wall. And then other than that, towards the top cul-de-sac by the water tank, there was going to be a couple of single-family homes. And again, that was more just condensed to be the townhome layout, just in an event to not have just two random homes up there and be able to sort of maintain the unit count and provide something that would kind of flow with the rest of the community and the layout here.
So on this drawing, you have when you talk about unit count, you have what initially was approved by the board there right below this site plan depiction.
Yep.
Where you talk about initial board of adjustment approval for phase 2 had 181 units, dwelling units in this phase. And
Correct.
what is being offered here is 178 units.
That's right, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
can you repeat that for me?
So if you look there in the text of that says initial board of adjustment approval for this project, the board already approved a phase 1, a phase 2, and in phase 2, which what we're dealing with here, the number of dwelling units that had been previously approved was 181. This proposal is for 178.
And if you look at the total, the initial BOA approval had more units kind of in the phase 1 apartment, big house section. That ended up being 319 after detailed design and architectural plans were put together. So that went up by 3 units in implementation. But then for this one, we're offsetting those 3 units down for this approval. So the total unit count's 497 for both phases combined.
So in terms of the inset that you have on here, Scott, if you'll just tell the board what the purpose of the inset is.
Yeah, we just wanted to be able to help. It's kind of hard at this scale, zoomed out, to capture the full project limits, to see what the impact would be for lot lines and setbacks. So this inset shows a very typical townhome traditional townhome layout with a 10-foot front setback. Obviously, there's 45-foot right-of-way, which provides you with some setback with driveway off of the back of curb. So you can kind of see now you actually have ownership of sort of front yard as well as backyard, and sort of the building envelope you can see is sort of the dark gray, and then the building setback lines are shown in there, showing that we're inside those, and then they have basically rear yards and driveways in the front.
So have you been before this board with other attached housing of this nature?
I have, yes.
Okay. And so you said this was a typical layout of a townhouse attached product with driveways and houses and where the road is in relation to the townhouses?
Yes.
And so you're familiar with the PUD standards for Buncombe County?
Yes.
And do you, as an expert in civil engineering, do you believe this application meets those PUD standards?
Yes.
That's really what we have today, other than I was going to say some things to honor my hourly rate.
Can you confirm that all the parking, that there's no parking within a right-of-way or anything like that, that all the parking's within the lot?
Well, there is parking within the right-of-way, so if you see on the actual inset, we have a 20.5-foot driveway from back of curb to front of the unit. So we essentially we do have single-car garages, but there is parking inside of, it's kind of half in, half out between right-of-way and setback.
And if you didn't make the proposed changes to the project, would you be able to park it? No.
No, if you go look, I think it's important to look at what was approved before. These were part of the record before. And so, and I don't mind being sworn in, there's nobody here, but let me go ahead and get sworn in just in case somebody that's watching this is like, why is he not being sworn in?
Raise your right hand and state your name.
Craig Justice.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. So the photographs or the architectural renderings is what was part of the former packet. So what was presented before was a building rental community that wasn't divided for home ownership, right? This photograph is what we presented before. This is what the product was going to look like. This is where the cars were going to be parked. And so this is what we're talking about today, meaning the use of the property doesn't change. So when you divide up for a home ownership, you run into a foul with the fact that the county requires a 45-foot right-of-way. You typically have the townhouse driveways that are close to the road. The key is that the cars are not parking in the road. And this is very typical of the townhouse attached product. That's why he said he's done this before. Of course, I just went through one just recently with y'all.
Sorry to interrupt, can I ask, in the previous plan that was approved, will you remind us, was the parking, so there was no parking in the right-of-way because it was a rental product under a different standard?
Correct.
Okay, so this is the thing that we encountered a couple of months ago, this exact same scenario?
It
Okay.
is. Yeah. It is. And this is unless you're not going to have for this attached housing, you're not going to have this huge giant driveway because it defeats clustering, it adds more impervious surface. This is what you generally would show. So literally all we're doing is creating home ownership opportunities here. It's the same use of property, if you will.
And I kind of chime in real quick,
Yeah.
Chip. And the other thing too, in terms of the building envelopes and the footprints and kind of the front and rear, it's basically the same location as the previous. Again, some of the buildings moved around once we found out more about where stormwater infrastructure may have to go. But in terms of the actual impact of the footprint that's on the plan, they're essentially the same footprint, driveway lengths, that
The
type of thing.
application says that you want deviations to interior setbacks.
That's because there's shared lines. So the townhome unit itself technically has a property line that shares the wall in between the units. Yeah, because before with it being rental,
It was
There
just
was
attached.
no,
Okay.
there was no lines, yep. I know it's a little weird, it was a little bit weird too, but yeah, so technically there was a 0 line setback that butts up against each other.
Thank you. Sorry, we don't get a lot of these, but we did have one a couple of months ago that we were not agreeable to doing much with and sent them on their way. So I just wanted to
Yep.
get myself up to speed.
Well, the townhouse product like we just had with the lengthy hearing I was involved with, that was a townhouse product, that, meaning it was attached housing. So we had the same issues in the sense of, because you have a 40-foot, 5-foot right-of-way and you're trying to create home ownership, and you don't want this huge gigantic driveway, you're gonna have a car in the parking lot and a car on that paved driveway outside of the road. That's typical for attached housing. And so that's why you say, you know, we need to get a modification from the base standards in order to allow for attached housing. So that's pretty typical of attached housing.
Correct.
So, any other questions for Scott?
So like with public safety, how will it impact public safety? You know, I mean, is it wide enough for like fire trucks to go through and all that?
Yes, it meets the fire marshal reviewed it as part of TRC, and the road widths and all the turning maneuvers have been looked at.
And there's no changes to like heights, amenities, anything else?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
And then can I ask the staff if, for clarification, is there an issue with the new parking situation that it's an ownership, individual ownership piece? Are there any concerns on that? I didn't see any in the report, but just want to verify.
No, there wouldn't be concerns. Again, it's the same product, it's just that they have to waive the parking because technically per the ordinance, we can't count parking within the right-of-way, but it's the same exact layout.
But to the county's position is there's no concerns about that?
No.
And the odd thing, again, is if you look at the photograph where the cars are parked, it's the exact same before as it is today. The line she's speaking about is simply to create home ownership versus rental occupancy. So again, that's why the product or the end use is not changing.
All right, any other questions for either Craig or the expert?
And I just wanted to mention that, again, a lot of this is being driven not only to keep out of this wetland area with some of the amenities, we've moved them. Because of the stormwater, we made adjustments. But in the main, this is being driven by today's market for this area of saying we need the flexibility of home ownership. There's actually a statute for Amy, the purposes maybe for a lawyer, but the Plain Community Act, I don't know if you've heard of the Plain Community Act, but 47F-1-106 says local governments should not use regulation when the use of property doesn't change, simply because you're showing a different type of ownership. So essentially what we're driving here is the use of the property is not going to change. It's just how we divide up the property for ownership purposes. And so anyway, because of that tweak, we think it meets the PUD standard still. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but that's our presentation.
Okay, do we want to close the public section and move to board discussion? Okay, so we'll close the public session and open for the board discussion.
If the heights and the size of the lots and the amenities and the retaining walls and all are not changing, then we're really here for kind of a technocratic reason, then I don't have any issue with approving it. I would make a motion to approve it.
I'll second that, and I agree it's materially the same application we've seen before with the same configuration.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know when they're, as part of the comprehensive plan, is that, because this is something I think is going to come up more and more. We had this like glut of apartment development, and maybe absorption isn't what they thought it would be, and there might be, and there's value engineering reasons why this might come to. And I'm wondering, are they gonna address this? Because this is like the second one in a couple of months, and it feels like it's just clogs up the system unnecessarily, especially if there's case law that says that they're not supposed to do that anyway.
It's something that I can definitely bring up to the long-range planning team who worked on that. Additionally, as I think we've made aware to the board, we have been looking at text amendments as well, to where situations, not necessarily as this, but changes which it's the same product, wouldn't necessarily have to come back before the board.
I heard a motion and a second. Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And no abstentions? Okay. All right, Amy.
Okay. With respect to
I think we need to do our motions, sorry. Carla, do you want to do it?
Yeah, sorry, I think I said I would make a motion, sorry, Amy.
I'm sorry, I thought I
but
heard a motion and a second,
Well,
but
we
did,
voted
didn't
and we
adopt
gotta
our
do the-
findings of fact, so.
Sounds
We
good,
gotta,
thank you.
yeah. Sorry.
No worries. If you guys are okay with me doing it, I will go for it. So, Madam Chair, based on the evidence presented to this board, including the following exhibits, the petitioner's application, the submitted revised development plan, GIS map, staff report, and testimony presented at this hearing, I move that this board adopt the following findings of fact: that this matter was properly advertised, is within the board's jurisdiction, and is ripe for its consideration. And two, that this application, together with the conditions proposed by staff and agreed to by the applicant, does meet the requirements for granting a special use permit contained within Buncombe County Code of Ordinances, Section 78-621, subsection 3. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Based on the foregoing findings of fact and for the reasons set forth therein, I move that the requested special use permit be approved and that the order approving the permit be adopted and executed as presented and as modified in this meeting.
Okay, all in favor?
I need a second.
Oh, first and second, you're first. Who's second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And no opposed, okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Keep us on the path. That's fine. All right, now we're ready for Amy.
with respect to Board of Adjustment case ZPH 2025-0006, I propose the following draft order, otherwise dispensing with the caption and the preliminary findings of fact. I'll move to preliminary, findings of fact, section A1, that the land within the PUD will be under single ownership or management by the applicants before final approval and/or construction or proper assurances have been provided such that the development can be successfully completed by the applicant. 2, that the density is consistent with the intent of the district in which it is located and conforms to that permitted in the district in which the development is located. 3, that the land uses are compatible with and do not violate the intent of the zoning district and do not disrupt the character of the community. 4, that the proposed land use meets minimum requirements for land development as follows. The minimum lot size and requirements for interior setbacks do preserve the spirit and intent of this section and does comply with the density requirements for zoning, for the zoning district with respect to the total development plan. 4B, proposed heights set forth in the application do comply with the spirit and intent of this section with respect to total development plan. Where building heights exceed the maximum allowed by the ordinance, this board finds that the unique elements of the development impose requirements for additional height that are not universal throughout the zoning district. 4C, this board finds that the minimum distance between buildings will ensure adequate air, light, privacy, and space for emergency vehicles. 5, that the development does provide reasonable visual, acoustical privacy for all dwelling units. Fences, insulation, walks, barriers, and landscaping will be used for the protection and aesthetic enhancements of the property and privacy of its occupants, screening of objectionable views or uses, and reduction of noise. 6, that the structures located on the perimeter of the development will be set back from the property lines and rights-of-way abutting streets in accordance with the provisions of the zoning ordinance controlling the district. 7, this board finds that the proposed parking does comply with the spirit and intent of this section. 8, this board finds that the conveyance and maintenance of open space, recreational areas, and community-owned facilities are in accordance with GS 47-1, the Unit Ownership Act, and/or any other appropriate mechanisms as specified. 9, this board finds that the building envelopes are shown in the submitted plans and depicts the maximum expanse of the proposed footprint of the structures. 6, that pursuant to 78-677G of the Buncombe County zoning ordinance, satisfactory provision and arrangements have been made for at least the following as it relates to: A, the proposed use will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhoods of the proposed use. B, the proposed use will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or public improvements in the neighborhood. C, the use will not cause or have adverse effects on surrounding properties due to noise, vibration, odor, or glare effects. D, satisfactory ingress and egress for the proposed use of the property and proposed structures has been provided. Particular attention has been paid to the automotive and pedestrian safety and convenience, traffic flow, and control. Got ahead of myself. E, provision of off-street parking and loading areas where required, with particular attention to the items in section 78-658 of the Buncombe County zoning ordinance have been arranged for. Provision of adequate and proper utilities with reference to locations, availability, and compatibility have been arranged. Provisions of buffering, if deemed necessary, with reference to type, location, and dimensions have been arranged for. Signs, if any, and proposed exterior lighting, with reference to glare and traffic safety, economic effect, and compatibility are in harmony with the properties in the district. Playgrounds, open spaces, yards, landscaping, access ways, and pedestrian ways with reference to location, size, and suitability have been arranged for. Building and structures with reference to location, size, and use are acceptable. Hours of operation with particular reference to protecting and maintaining the character of the neighborhoods are acceptable. That the following conditions are necessary to ensure that the proposed use will conform to the requirements and spirit of the Buncombe County zoning ordinance. A preliminary and as-built subdivision application shall be required prior to submitting a draft final plat of this project. B, the draft final plat of this project must be reviewed and approved, and the plat must be recorded and lots platted with unique pins for each lot prior to the submittal of the master plan review permit. Project must be constructed as depicted in the site plan. Prior to the commencement of the land disturbance and construction activity, the applicant shall submit a site plan development permit for the entire project indicating the following information: the exact location of all buildings and accessory structures, commercial lighting plan, buffering, landscaping, and parking lot landscaping, retaining walls, easements and rights-of-way, approved 911 road names, any other conditions of site development approved by the Board of Adjustment, a copy of approved permits from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the North Carolina Department of Transportation, and the Department of Environmental Quality where applicable. This master site plan permit approval shall not replace the requirements of pulling an individual site plan permit for each building or structure within the development. Applicant must agree in writing to these conditions prior to the commencement of site work. Conclusions of law: based on the foregoing findings of fact, the board makes the following conclusions of law. The applicant's request for a special use permit, together with the imposition of conditions found necessary above, which are incorporated herein as fully set forth, meets each applicable requirement of the Buncombe County zoning ordinance. This board therefore makes the following order: that the applicant is hereby granted a special use permit to establish a planned unit development on the property as requested, subject to the conditions referenced above, which are incorporated herein as fully set forth within this 14th day of May, 2025.
I make a motion to approve this order.
Who's my second? All right, all in favor? Aye. No opposed? Okay, I guess we're done.
Excellent. Thanks. Shortest one ever.
All right, so is there anything else for the good of Board of Adjustment?
I think that we should have a discussion, or our chairman can have a discussion with staff about the number of people that we have available and attendance and stuff in general, if it's becoming a struggle. And I guess there's lots of reasons why, but it used to be the assumption that the regular members were automatically, assumed to attend, but now,
And they had a couple absences per year, I think, was the language that we used to abide by.
and then now there's just a generic, anybody want to put their hand up, but I think that creates an environment where people hang back hoping that somebody else might do it.
Maybe.
But that's just my,
Honestly,
on
I
it.
have it on my calendar unless I'm not able to make it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is too, I know Griffith sent an email out saying that essentially we need 2 alternates because we're short people. Now, that email went out a little while back. So I guess for me, the question is, if people didn't step up, when was the decision made, as far as these other people that came here, okay? I mean, was it made at the last minute? Or should there be a timetable that if there's not enough members, you call it? I mean, like I said, as regulars, we have it on our calendar, okay? But these are citizens of the county. And they may have had to take off work. So my question is, why did the email go out saying we need alternatives when no one stepped forward? Why were people not notified? I mean, we weren't notified.
I think also when alternates are considered, if you used to get 3 or 4 times a year where you could say, no, I'm not available this time, and then that was okay. But if it was beyond that, then you were removed as an alternate. And that's what I think could cycle us through to new members who are interested in serving, who have more availability.
Well, and also we had that special meeting lately too.
Yeah.
I do think that the special meetings wear people out. And I think we had, didn't we have 2
We had 2.
for that
And
one
this year.
case? Yeah, and so that's why I think, I always think it's problematic from that perspective, because
They feel like they did their job.
Yeah, well, again, my issue is how we end up here today and no one seemed to know. What happened, and this is addressed to the county staff, do they have a policy or procedure that if we're not gonna meet the necessary quorum, what is the timeline to make that decision?
I think what we should do is to have conversations this month and then have Griffin weigh in when he gets back from his trip, and then be able to go over current protocols and what we might be able to change, if anything, next month, and bring it up for discussion at the end of next month's meeting as well.
But I mean, how often are we not able, this is the first time in my time here that we haven't been able to hear something because of quorum.
Now, it happened, I remember one other case, and again, it seemed to come down to at noon, the day of the meeting, that there wasn't enough people here for zoning variance. I mean, this happened a while ago, and you're right, it may have been before you were on the board.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I remember this situation happening.
Amy, can I ask a question? Is there anything in state law or otherwise that would prevent us from changing the required quorum in our development ordinance for variances? Is there a reason why it's more than special use?
I was actually just looking into that right now. I'm gonna need to, because I wanted to check your bylaws as well as, and then match them up to the law. And I can get back to you either with an email or at the next meeting, letting you know what your options are.
Cool.
The law used to go into this at the state level, a statute as well. So, and then that prescribes what we do as, for our bylaws, but I don't know what it says now.
For what it's worth, the percentage in the Asheville Board of Adjustment is the same as it is here.
Yeah, I think until today, honestly, I feel like it's worked fine, but that's a Griffin thing too. You know,
Yeah.
he's the one on the front line on that.
Yeah, but it's like I think my understanding is that we're like really behind because of that big case and there are like four variances, which usually take a little bit more time, or 3 variances that are getting bumped, so it's sort of a bad timing.
That's right.
One thing I think might not be a bad idea is for staff to send an email out to everybody essentially reflecting this conversation.
You mean the Board of Adjustment members,
I'm
everybody?
sorry, Board of Adjustment members, and telling them that we couldn't hear variances because we didn't have enough people. It might kind of put a little bit of pressure to,
Well, I would also ask, why did people not make it? I mean, if you're sick, you know, you have no control over that, right? Is that why we didn't get it? Or,
I don't know, or I guess the question is, being sick is one thing, okay, or if you have an emergency situation. So I'll get back to the original announcement from Griffith, that email. Did he get no response? And I believe that came out a couple weeks ago.
It was a while ago.
So.
Or it could
you
be
know,
time of year.
yeah.
But I do agree, like, I think some sort of update to the people who weren't here, like, hey, just FYI, like, this thing happened. We're sort of looking at attendance, might not be the worst thing. I don't know if it can come from Andy, but maybe that's something
Yeah.
to chat about.
We'll have conversations with staff this month and see what we want to do. Maybe run it by y'all first too, next month.
but the other thing is, you know, was it a one-off or is it a standard that they're not showing up?
Well, I don't know if it's within our policy to measure attendance. Or,
It is, yeah.
or, you know, because we're regular members. Everyone here is a regular member. You're an
I think
alternate.
that alternate language is still in there about you get a certain number of times per year to say, oh, I'm not available this time. I don't know about regular members, how many absences you can have and what for, so.
I think you could have too many.
All right, let's continue it for next month and make sure we have some direction next month from
Okay,
the
so
board.
we'll table that discussion. And then we're going to have, who's going to follow up to send out notes to the rest of the board members and alternates?
Concerning the discussion today,
Yeah, we're going to table the discussion. There's no decision to make.
I can follow that up.
Okay, that'd be great. All right, anything else? All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
You do, motion to adjourn.
A second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
Carla, you were a program.